Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another Game Vault video. As always, I'm Captain Beefy with the Game Vault. We're going to talk about accountability today. Pointing the finger back at Dragon Age the Veilguard and how the director points to the hate campaign over game flaws to explain its abysmal failure. Yeah, it was the hate campaign that made this game suck so bad. Anyway, let's cue up the music and we're going to talk about this. Corrine Bush, the guy that thinks he's a girl and the director of Dragon Age the Veilguard, has recently attributed the game's disappointing performance to a purported hate campaign and review bombing orchestrated by discontented factions within the gaming community. There's a name for that discontented factions. It's called almost everybody, okay? The game sucked. I didn't play it. A lot of people didn't play it. A lot of people didn't have to play it. All we had to do was watch some videos. Watch the cringe dialogue. Watch this trash. I think that's the character's name. Tash. Trash is a much better name. Come out as non-binary to its mother. I'm non-binary. And that whole conversation. Watch the main character, Rook, make the decision to become trans and all these other completely awful, cringe-inducing scenes that were focused on the sexuality of the character. It was awful. Absolutely awful. The character designs are horrible. I mean, look at these characters. They're silly looking. They look like Fortnite characters. They do not look like these dark fantasy characters that we've seen in previous Dragon Age iterations. It's way too colorful. Everything's crazy looking. Even the advertising of it, the purple. We see this so much anymore. And it's getting to be very common in advertising. Anytime I see all this purple in a game, it immediately turns me off because it just, I hate to say it, but it's like indicative of like the game's going to be woke as hell for some reason. And I don't know why. There's no scientific basis to that, of course. There's no real basis to it. But it just seems like anytime you see all that purple in the advertising, that it turns out to be that way. So anyway, a closer examination reveals that the failure of Veilguard stems not from external harassment, but from the fundamental missteps in game design and a departure from what made Dragon Age beloved by fans. Bush's claims versus reality. In a series of statements made to former Kotaku writer Hayes Madsen, Bush claims that Dragon Age the Veilguard has become the target of a hate campaign, positioning it at the center of a cultural war on social media platforms. The director attributes negative comments and review bombing to the highly polarizing times we live in, suggesting that these external pressures overshadow the game's intrinsic flaws. So here's some advice to anyone out there who's considering creating a game or going into video game design out there. If you want to make a game, don't put stuff in it that's divisive, right? You could have made the Dragon Age game and not put any of that non-binary trans garbage in there. None of it. And it would not have made the game worse. In fact, it would have made the game better. Okay? You didn't have to go and check off all the boxes as far as diversity goes. Black guy, Chinese girl, whatever else, this and that, Latina. I get it. You want a virtue signal and you want to make everybody feel quote unquote seen. You want to be diverse and you want everybody to be represented, but it gets to be silly after a while. Okay. In a game where you have a character creator, that's really enough. That way a person can create a character and they can play as somebody. They can create the character that they want to look like within a certain parameter, okay? You know, top surgery scars. Come on, man, that's ridiculous. Putting a wiener on a woman body, that's ridiculous. It's not necessary. You know, we saw that in Cyberpunk 2077. We saw it, Baldur's Gate. You know, these things are beyond stupid. They don't belong in video games. There should be none of that in there whatsoever. It's beyond stupid, you know. But in a character creator, if you want to make a black person, a white person, a Hispanic person, an Asian person. You want to have those features in there, mix and match and do whatever you want. That's fine. I really don't care. Let's leave it on the surface like that. We don't need to get into what's inside people's pants and all that. That's just going a little too far. Okay. You can use your imagination, player. You can say, oh, you know what? I'm going to imagine that I'm a girl with a big wiener. If you want. I mean, that's up to you. You don't have to see it on the screen. Oh, it's so stupid. But anyway, it's completely unnecessary. And you don't need to have all these weird, out of place characters in a game. Like centuries ago, the world was not a traveled place like it is today, right? We didn't have people from every corner of the world spread out to every other corner of the world because there was no travel like there is today. There were no airplanes. The shipping lanes weren't there. Travel was a lot less prevalent. And people hadn't migrated as much and all that. Tribes were indigenous to their areas. You had, and there was some movement. But for the most part, people lived in the areas where they had lived for centuries and all that. So seeing all these different people in an area, it's kind of off-putting and silly and all that. And it just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. And it's weird. It's off-putting. Just let things be. And, you don't have to have all that over-representation. Make the game cool. Make it whatever. Anyway, let's move on. It's hard. I grew up in a time when it really felt like we're there to celebrate the games and to have these shared experiences, and that drive is still there. Bush opined in the highly flattering article Madston scribed on Inverse. I saw this article. It was ridiculous. I think the discourse we see is the result of highly polarized times, and perhaps it's a little naive. I know it's hard when you have to ask the question, is this game for me? Do I belong here? And games are better for it when we can say, yes, you do belong here. While Bush emphasizes inclusivity and diversity as pillars of modern gaming development, it's essential to scrutinize whether these elements were executed thoughtfully or simply imposed to cater to a specific audience. The game's abysmal review scores and dismal sales figures indicate that many players felt alienated rather than welcomed. Now, let's back up a minute. You talk about being seen and feeling represented and all that. So you made a game that really leans heavily into this whole non-binary experience, this whole trans experience and all that. And good for you. If that's what you wanted, that's fine, right? That's fine. I have no problem with people making these kind of games. Dustborn leaned into that kind of stuff. That Dustborn was the woke left's dream game, right? It catered 150% to that type of person, and it sold abysmally bad. But it also didn't have a 10-year development cycle and several $100 million budget, So it is what it is. Stick to small games if you want to do that. If you want to make a game for a niche audience, you can't do it with a big game like this. You just can't. It's not going to sell. It's going to do poorly. You can't do it to an existing IP that already has an established audience because you're going to piss off the established audience. They're not going to be there. They're not going to buy the game. In fact, they're going to reject the game, and they're going to do so in a manner that's very loud and sometimes very rude, like happened this time. And that's just the way it is, man. It's just the way it is. You just can't do it that way. Anyway, divisive identity politics over substance. Dragon Age has long been celebrated for its rich storytelling and complex characters. And, it has had LGBT characters in the story or in the game itself in the past. However, the Veilguard appears to have shifted its focus disproportionately towards identity politics, sidelining the intricate narratives and dark fantasy elements that fans cherished. This pivot may have diluted the series' core essence, leaving players yearning for the depth and darkness that defined earlier installments. Now, it's one thing to have a story. Oh, there's Corrine Bush. God, man, it's so crazy. Probably spent more money on plastic surgery to look like a girl than you spent on the actual game itself, development. So, to have a character in a game that is LGBT is one thing, right? A minor character, side character, whatever. To have a story that's focused on that is a completely different thing. So, because a lot of people would come at, well, it's always had those characters. This isn't the first time. You're just, they'll come at you with stuff like that. It's like, yeah, well, Dragon Age never focused the entire game on that before, and this game is entirely focused on that. Not 100%, but man, it leans heavily into it. You kind of can't get away from it. I've seen scene after scene after scene that just reflects this kind of stuff, and people arguing against, oh no, you just, it doesn't like that. I only saw it one time and all that. No, you're gaslighting and you're lying. Just shut up, Bush's emphasis on diversity and authentic experiences raises the question, was this focus at the expense of gameplay mechanics and storytelling quality? The game's inability to balance these aspects likely contributed to its poor reception rather than an orchestrated hate campaign. One of the critical missteps of the Veilguard and its apparent disregard for the established lore and player expectations of the Dragon Age universe. By moving away from the franchise's dark fantasy roots and eliminating crucial elements of player choice, the game alienated its loyal fan base. Now, Dragon Age's strength has always been its ability to offer meaningful decisions that impact the narrative, fostering a sense of agency and customization among players. Veilguard's departure from this formula undermined the very foundation that made the series successful. Now, this isn't the only game that we've seen this happen with. And it seems to happen more and more with games as time moves on, right? I remember Fallout 4 got a lot of flack for its decisions and how, like, the choice you made, like when you were offered a chance to make a decision on something, what you said didn't always reflect the choice you made. It was kind of ambiguous as far as that went. And, but it just seems like as we're moving forward, you're having less and less opportunity to make meaningful choices, whereas kind of they're going to lead you to the same decision. There's nothing I hate more than having a conversation with a character that is going to lead you to an event, right? Let's say the event is, I'm going to declare war on this other town, okay, from the town I'm in. And so I'm talking to somebody and it gives me all these narrative choices and all that. But ultimately, the only thing that's going to move me out of this conversation and move me forward is to declare war. Right? I can ask about this. I can ask about that. I can say, well, what about if we offer peace? Yes, we have tried to offer peace in the past, but that's not going to work. So we're going to have to try something different this time. So it seems like more and more games are doing that sort of thing. And if we, I don't know if it's just the dumbing down of the players. I don't know if it's lazy programming, lazy development and all that, lazy developers. We're even looking at Assassin's Creed Shadows now. It looks like it's going to have a canon mode where you can actually set it up so all the decisions are made for you to have a quote-unquote canon playthrough where everything happens the way it's supposed to happen in the game to get you the canon playthrough, which is so weird. Like, I mean, at this point, you may as well just make an Assassin's Creed Shadows movie and just sit down and watch the movie and don't even interact with anything, right? I don't know. Anyway, whether individuals liked or hated the Veilguard is a subjective metric based on opinion. However, the objective reality we can point to surrounding Veilguard's release is the sales numbers and review scores it garnered. These tangible metrics of a game's success, its review scores and sales numbers, tell a compelling story. Veilguard has a 3.9 out of 10 score on the review site Metacritic. And according to supposed insiders who spoke with YouTuber SmashJT, the game failed to move 1.5 million units against an initial 10 million unit goal. 15%. Dragon Age: The Veilguard's abysmal rating and disappointing sales figures are hard to dismiss as a mere fallout from a hate campaign. These indicators suggest that the game failed to resonate with both critics and players alike, pointing to inherent issues in its design and execution. If the game's good, a bunch of people talking crap about it on YouTube is not going to keep people from buying it, okay? It's not. I'm sorry. Anyway, by attributing the game's shortcomings to a hate campaign, Bush may be deflecting responsibility from the actual flaws within Veilguard, which ultimately rest on the shoulders of the individual in charge. In the Veilguard's case, that's Dragon Age: The Veilguard director, Cory Bush. And let's circle back to something we've talked about before on his channel, and I remember Asmongold talking about this before. I can't remember the game he was referring to, but it's toxic positivity. And I have a feeling this is something that occurs in almost all of these development studios these days. And we've seen it in we see it everywhere these days, right? We saw it with the body positivity movement, right? Where people are praising Lizzo for being beautiful and you can be healthy at any size and you could, and all that, when she is clearly unhealthy and disgustingly obese and people are praising her and calling her beautiful. I guarantee you, if you had a friend that was a woman and he says, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful. You look just like Lizzo," she would not be happy with you because she doesn't consider Lizzo beautiful. Even if she referred to her as beautiful on social media or whatever and supported her in that regard, she would be pissed at you, right? These are the lies. This is that toxic positivity. And I'm sure it goes on in these meetings, in these development studios, where everybody's just like, yes, this is great, this is wonderful, and everybody's just holding back any criticisms, or they're no, that's not right, no, it's going to be good, no, Steve, that's not going to happen, just people are going to love it, and then it comes out and it fails because nobody can take constructive criticism anymore. Look what happens when you criticize something in one of these games, when they put out a trailer that you don't like, right? Let's take the latest Naughty Dog one, the Heretic one. And people criticized it, right? What did you get called? You immediately got called misogynistic. You got called racist. You got called all kinds of words because you didn't like it. Not because, you didn't like the trailer. You found the character to be uninteresting or annoying. She came across as insufferable to me. That was the word I chose to use. I was like, I just can't. I don't want to play as this character. She seems like a real bitch. And I don't want to run around with this character for 20 or 30 hours. I don't like her, It was like that with Forspoken. When I first saw Forspoken and I saw the gameplay trailer, I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. The parkour, the running around, the jumping, the traversal looked great. The combat looked interesting. I mean, we only saw little flashes of it, so it was really hard to tell what was going on there, but it was kind of neat. It was flashy and colorful and, looked really, really cool. And then when I saw her talking to her wristband and heard her conversations, I was like, I cannot spend 30 or 40 hours listening to this. It's awful. The dialogue was just so cringeworthy. There's no way I could do it. Took it right off my list. Unwish listed it. I was like, nope, can't do it. Marvel's Midnight Suns. Love, I'm a big Marvel fan growing up and all that. And I love the Midnight Suns, the Ghost Riders and all that kind of stuff. The gameplay was fun. The deck building, quote unquote, was fun. The conversation between the characters, just awful. And I found myself, in the beginning listening to it and trying to get through that whole friendship thing. And, and then I found myself just speeding through it, skipping all the dialogue, and then you're missing everything. And then at the end, I just uninstalled and I'm like, I can't finish this game. It's just too aggravating. And it's sad. It's really sad. The ability to write good games and good dialogue just seems to be a thing of the past. I don't know what it is. Anyway, the narrative can be perceived as an attempt to mask failure with accusations of bigotry, shifting the focus away from constructive criticism. Yeah, they can't take constructive criticism. Bush, an individual who identifies as a gender that differs from their anatomy, seems to be playing the bigotry card a little too loudly to cover up one inescapable truth. Dragon Age: The Veilguard failed miserably. It could mark the end of the entire franchise, and any effort to deflect from that objective reality only seems to serve a narrative that benefits Bush and the rest of the BioWare development team. Dragon Age: The Veilguard should serve as a cautionary tale for BioWare and other developers. Success comes from a gamer-centric approach. Maintaining the core elements that define a franchise is crucial to that. You ignore fan expectations at your own financial peril. Deviating from established lore can lead to significant backlash. The failure to claim any responsibility while running to friendly outlets that allow one to point to an external boogeyman and artificial hate campaigns only makes the development team look worse. Look, man, own it. If you screw up and you own it, you do earn some respect. You may not get all the respect in the world, but, as far as Bush goes, if Bush was to come out and say, look, I messed up. I let the team down. I shouldn't have done this. I projected my own self, my own insecurities, my own life. This was a trauma dump for me. And I owe BioWare an apology. I owe the developers an apology. And I owe the fans of this franchise an apology. I'm sorry, and I'm stepping down from my position. That would earn some respect from me. I would never be like, all right, well, great, I'm looking forward to their next work. No, I would never trust them again, but I'd get some respect, like, all right, well, that was very good of them to man up. Anyway, Corian Bush's emphasis on inclusivity isn't the point. That doesn't appear to be what the gaming community at large is looking for, based on the failure of this game, along with other DEI titles like Concord, Dustborn, Star Wars Outlaws, and Unknown 9 Awakening. It's fine to have a diverse cast harmoniously integrated with the game's design and storytelling, but that can't come at the expense of the experience and fan expectations. Moving forward, BioWare should heed lessons from the Vanguard's reception and make sure future projects honor the legacy of their franchises while thoughtfully evolving to meet the needs of the audience. You hear that? Anyway, while external negativity can impact a game's reception, the primary responsibility lies in delivering a product that aligns with both creators' vision and players' expectations. Dragon Age: The Veilguard's failure underscores the importance of maintaining this balance. Rather than attributing shortcomings to a hate campaign, it's imperative for BioWare to introspect and address the genuine areas where the game fell short. What do you guys think of this, man? You think Bush is just... It's what they do, man. They can't accept responsibility. They can't admit to failure. They always divert. They always, when you point a finger, there's 4 fingers pointing back at you. Well, actually, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you and a thumb pointing up. But yeah, this failure is squarely on Corian Bush's shoulders. And I guarantee you this is a trauma dump by that person. Or this is their own personal experiences brought to life in this game. And... I'd say I'd feel bad for them, but I really don't. I could care less, honestly. They have no business in this business if that's how they're going to, make a video game, if that's how they're going to treat their writing and all that. And whoever greenlit this project and approved all this, shame on them, man. That they ought to go too. Everybody involved with this should be fired, I think, But whatever. We'll see what happens with Mass Effect coming up. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Ring that bell for notifications. As always, I'm Captain Beefy with the Game Vault. I will see you next time. Until then, peace.